So let's master the things that control our thought consciousness first, which is our brain. And we've been talking about our brain all weekend. You know, we've been talking about how it works, and we've been talking about the importance of it, because if we don't get that right, how are we ever going to be more strategic in terms of our thought consciousness? As many of you learned about me with my situation, with the concussion. Boy, when my brain was affected, you better believe my mind was affected. You better believe how I was living in life and feeling and sensing life was incredibly affected. And I had to figure that out. And so when I had to figure it out, as I'm writing the book and I'm recognizing, whoa, these issues I'm having, these are neurological issues. These aren't just like, wow, am I bored with life? Like, something's going on with me. I had to pick up the phone and say, hey, remember I told the story. I got to call someone and say, hey, these are what I'm experiencing. What do you think? And he said, you got to get on a plane and come down here. And then I got tested, and I found out where my cognitive ability was. And I got to see the scan, and I learned about my brain, and I learned about a program to get me back to health, and that will help me become more conscious of what's on the dashboard of consciousness, right? I got to take care of my brain first. How many follow? All right. So what if I told you I brought that guy here today? So one of the best things about my life is I get to meet the foremost experts in every area imaginable. You know, from the #1 physical fitness coach who coached Lance Armstrong, we've had him before, to the #1 brain and neuroscience guy on the planet who made it actually understandable for people. Because a lot of what was done in neuroscience, unfortunately, was not like pop culture, like we could actually understand it. It's great that they were all doctors and MDs and things like that, and he is too, but he was able to say, no, here's why your brain is important, and here's how it kind of functions, is here's what you need to do to take care of it, because your brain controls your thought consciousness anyway, so you better get that thing taken care of, right? We better ensure that that is right. Many of you know him from his books, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, Change Your Brain, Change Your Body. Many of you have seen him on public television specials now over the last couple of years, generated well over $20 million for public television, all teaching people about their brain. He's really the guy, in my opinion, who shifted the entire consciousness of the country to finally actually pay attention to the thing helping drive their consciousness, their brains. He not only made it understandable, he makes it realizable, and he has such great plans for it. His plan is what led me here today. If I didn't know him and I hadn't figured out what was going on with me, probably would have canceled the event. So not only is the man extraordinary in what he already does in the culture, in my own personal life, he's changed it. And he's changed a lot of my clients' lives too. He's someone I tremendously, tremendously respect. And he's just offered to come in here today and share what he knows with you, because he knows if you got a high-performance brain, you got a high-performance life. With that, ladies and gentlemen, Brendan Burchard, welcome for Dr. Daniel Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you feel that way when I'm done. Because I promise I'm going to raise your anxiety. But some anxiety is good. It's a fascinating study going on for the last 90 years. A psychologist from Stanford in 1921 evaluated 1,548 10-year-old children. And then they followed them for 90 years, looking at what were the traits that went with success, health, and longevity. And what they found was very interesting. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't a lack of worry. In fact, the don't worry, be happy people died the earliest. Having a little anxiety, especially when it comes to your health and your relationships, was good for you. The #1 predictor of longevity was the quality of the decisions you made throughout your life. People who were conscientious, when they said they'd show up, they actually showed up, lived the longest. So I'm so excited to be here with you. I'm grateful to Brendan, who's become a really good friend, and now I know him very intimately because I've gotten to look inside his skull. But if you pay attention to me today, I promise you I'll change your life. So, this is called High Performance Brains. 7 steps to creating a brain-smart life. You know, brains run the world. They run the stock market and the local market. Brains run huge corporations and the mom and pop shops down the street. Brains run governments, although not that well recently. They run schools, churches, families, my family, and they run you. So I'm here with my 2 friends, Mark Hyman and Mehmet Oz. We're doing a very cool program together I'm going to share with you in a little bit. Yet we rarely think about the brain, which is a huge mistake, because success always starts with a healthy brain. Here's the big idea for this afternoon. With a little forethought and a high-performance brain-smart plan, you can boost your brain and slow or even reverse the aging process, improve everything in your life, and I can prove it. So let's start. Step number 1, brain excellence is your competitive advantage in anything that you do. Your brain's involved in everything you do. How you think, how you feel, how you act, how you get along with other people. At the Amen clinics, I have looked at over 70,000 brains over the last 20 years. We have the world's largest database of brain imaging, images related to behavior. We have scanned almost anything you can think of. You know, the hardest study we did, though, was finding normal people. I have 75 murderers. They actually weren't that hard to find. They actually found us. We have thousands of people who have ADD, anxiety, depression, autism, traumatic brain injuries, Alzheimer's disease. And early on I went, well, in order to see what's wrong, you have to see what's right. And so we looked for normal people. And this was our definition of normal. No psychiatric illness at any point in your life, because I'm a psychiatrist. So I'm thinking, you know, if I want a healthy brain, probably shouldn't have things like ADD, anxiety, and depression. No brain injuries, no substance abuse. I mean, if you smoked pot 3 times in college, that didn't count really. Even now, if you're running for office, it sort of doesn't count anymore. You're not taking any medicine, and you don't have a first-degree relative with psychiatric illnesses. We screened 3,000 people who signed up. I'm normal. And when we actually talked to them, we ended up only scanning 90 of them. So if you struggle, welcome to normal. I tell my patients normal is just a city in Illinois. You know, I went there once. I spoke at the college in Normal, Illinois. It was so much fun for me because I went to the Normal grocery store. I was interviewed on the Normal radio station. I finally got to meet normal women. Being from California, it was a rare event. And you know, they had exactly the same problems that we had everywhere, right? If you struggle, that's normal. It just means if you want a high-performance life, get it treated. I mean, don't be stupid, right? We're going to talk today about above 100 IQ decisions and below 100 IQ decisions. And you want to keep yours above 100 if you want a high-performance life. So your brain's involved in everything you do. When your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled, you are much more likely to have trouble in your life. So these are two brain SPECT scans. SPECT is a study that we do at the Amen clinics. It's different than a CAT scan or an MRI. Those are anatomy studies. They show what the brain actually physically looks like. SPECT looks at function. It looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. They're actually really easy to understand because we look for three things: areas of the brain that work well, areas of the brain that are low in activity, and areas of the brain that are high in activity. So good activity, too little or too much, and then our job is to balance it. So the image on the left is a healthy scan. The image on the right is an alcoholic scan. Alcohol is not a health food. Unbelievable. Gotta have my 2 glasses of red wine a day. Doctor says I have to do it. That is because your doctor is a lush. Now, if you understand this concept, it is actually very disturbing. When your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain has trouble, you have trouble in your life. Why is that disturbing? It directly attacks the notion of free will. Because we sort of all think, well, everybody has the same level of free will. It's just not true. When you look at it from an imaging standpoint, some people, like the person on the left, has beautiful brain, which means they probably have about 85% free will. The person on the right, you know, maybe it's like 12%. And so the decisions that you make are a direct reflection. The quality of the decisions you make are a direct reflection of the health of your brain. With a healthy brain, you're happier, physically healthier, you're wealthier, wiser, you make better decisions, and you're more successful. When your brain is not healthy, for whatever reason, you had a brain injury, you've had substance abuse, you've been exposed to some toxic environmental toxin like mold, you end up being sadder, sicker, poorer, less wise. Your decisions are not as good, so you end up less successful in life. What I really want you to develop in these next 2 hours is brain envy. I want you to want to have a better brain. And unfortunately, this is what happens to your brain over time. Your brain gets less and less and less and less active with age. Now that I'm 57, I hate that. But as your skin falls off your face, the exact same process is happening in your brain. And I know you hate wrinkles. I want you even more to hate the low activity happening in your brain. So a 30-year-old scan compared to a typical 55-year-old scan compared to a typical 82-year-old scan, all the holes and valleys and crevices are just, her brain is deteriorating. But now, compare this woman to 82-year-old Dr. Doris Rapp, who's a world-famous physician. She's a pediatric allergist. She's considered the mother of environmental medicine. She's a friend of mine. And when she came to our clinic last year and got her brain scan, I'm like, Doris, you have like a hot brain. It's gorgeous. And I'm like totally a sucker for a beautiful brain. You know, some guys have fantasy women. I have fantasy brains. You have a choice. If you do the things I ask you to do today, you can slow or even reverse the aging process. Behavior gives you the difference between these two brains. The second step is very important. You have to know why you care. So why do you want to have a healthy brain? I know why I want to have a healthy brain. I have a wife I adore who's actually here. Is she here? Ah, she's stand up in the back so they can see you. Tana is the best partner on the planet. She's just finishing her 4th book. She's actually written 3 books to go along with my public television specials, Get Healthy with the Brain Doctor's Wife, and she's working on a new one called Live Longer with the Brain Doctor's Wife. She's stunning. And not only is she beautiful, she's beautiful on the inside. And I have 4 kids that I adore, and I now have 5 grandchildren. It's very clear to me why I want to be healthy, because I love my life, love my wife and my kids and the job that I have, the mission in life. It's very clear to me. And if I allow my brain to deteriorate, I get to be a burden to the people I love. I have no interest in being a burden. So I want you to write down right now 5 reasons, 5 positive reasons why you want a better brain. And I'll tell you mine. I want to live longer. It's true. You know, the average lifespan for a guy is in his late 70s. That's like 20 years from now. That seems a little too close. I have a mission to change the way psychiatric medicine is practiced. I've been working on it for 20 years. It's going to take at least 30 more. I need to be here with a good mind. I want to have great energy. I have a lot of things to do. And nothing happens if you don't have energy. I want to sustain my mental abilities. I see people's mental abilities deteriorate. And a lot of people think, I'm 45, my memory's not good, that's normal. That's not normal. That's a symptom that your brain is struggling. It's a problem if you're 40, if you're 50, if you're 60, 70, 80, or 90. Being mentally slow is not normal, no matter what your age. It's very important. Don't let that little lie seep into your brain. I want to love my wife and kids and grandkids. I am having so much fun. So Eli is 2 years old. He's so cute. And he's found his penis. And it's quite hysterical, actually. He was bothering the cat the other day. And the cat like ran up the stairs. And he's such a cute little boy. And when I'm there visiting him and he can't find me, he's like, Pop, where are you? And here my daughter's telling me the cat's name is Buggy. It's like, Buggy, where are you? It's just hysterical. It's molesting the cat. I need these stories. I mean, they keep me going. And I have a mission in life. I mean, this is serious stuff. I have this sense I'm going to be held accountable for what I do in my life. And the only way I'll fulfill it is if I have a good brain. So write down 5 things. And then I want you to write 5 negative reasons. What do you want to avoid? A little anxiety, as we talked about, is good. The don't worry, be happy people die early. I want to avoid Alzheimer's and aging diseases. I wrote a book called Preventing Alzheimer's. A very clear plan. How do you prevent Alzheimer's disease? You prevent all the illnesses that are associated with it, like heart disease and cancer, diabetes, depression. Doubles your risk for Alzheimer's disease, sleep apnea. You want to live a healthy life. Otherwise, Alzheimer's disease is expected to triple in the next 25 years, and there is no cure for it on the horizon. Because I'm going to tell you something a little bit that'll really scare the socks off you. I want to avoid feeling slow or depressed. I want to avoid being tired. I want to avoid hating my body. Like you go in the men's room, the dressing room at Nordstrom's, and they have these mirrors. And what is it about those mirrors? That they just make you look fat. And guys aren't supposed to worry about this, but I'm telling you, I'll never have pregnancy dementia. The big belly guys? I'm like, that's not going to happen. Why? Because the fat on your belly turns testosterone into estrogen. If you don't get rid of that belly, it turns you into a girl. It's a very bad thing. And what has turned out to be more important than anything for me is I want to avoid being a bad example to people that I love, because your behavior is contagious. If you are not living a healthy life, the people in your life are picking up on that. According to that study that I mentioned when we first started, the best predictors of longevity is the health of the people you spend time with. So if your habits are not healthy, you are in fact hurting the people you care about. So, Terry heard me talk about something I call the Dinosaur Syndrome. So I want to tell you about the Dinosaur Syndrome. About 3 or 4 years ago, Cyrus Raji, a friend of mine from the University of Pittsburgh, published a study that basically said as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain goes down. And I'm like, whoa. They did MRI scans, and what they found is that people who are overweight, so people who had a BMI between 25 and 30, had 4% less brain tissue than those people who are at a healthy weight. And their brains looked 8 years older than healthy people. And the people who were obese, the people who had a BMI over 30, they had 8% less brain tissue, and their brains looked 16 years older than healthy people. And I'm like, holy smokes, I lost 30 pounds. In my business, I cannot have a smaller brain, right? I totally have brain envy. And then I'm on a plane going from Chicago to Des Moines, Iowa for my public television specials. And I'm sitting next to a woman who's like really overweight. And I think to myself, Dinosaur Syndrome. Big body, little brain, become extinct. And anybody else here besides me grow up Catholic? Yeah, okay. Only the Catholics will understand what happened next. So all Catholics, we have the Catholic voice in our head that does a little running commentary on our lives and what we say and what we think and what we do. And because, my first thought is, maybe you should tell this woman about the Dinosaur Syndrome. And the Catholic voice went, shut your mouth. That is so rude. Never tell anybody that as long as you live. Two weeks later, I'm at GNC in Pittsburgh. We're talking about doing a program together. And their marketing director, Tom, is morbidly obese. And I don't know about you, but that sort of irritated me. If you're not living the message, you are not a good messenger. How do you market health when you're not healthy? And I was at dinner with him, and he's ordering for the table, and I'm just like horrified. It's like, get me a salad, put a piece of salmon on it, I'm good. And you should have seen the crap he was ordering. And when he ordered 2 soufflés for dessert, I couldn't stand it. And I'm like, Tom, I said, you want to avoid the Dinosaur Syndrome. And he's like, what's that? Big body, little tiny brain. You're gonna become extinct. And the whole conversation went about physical health and mental health. And I was sort of embarrassed that I got out of my mouth. And a month later, he wrote to me and said he'd lost 17 pounds. And then I had the next sort of hard point was, do I put it in my public television show? I mean, do I put the stake in the ground and go, get healthy or else? And I did. And Terry saw my show, and she came up to me at a lecture, and she said, Dr. Amen, I knew I was fat, and I knew I was ugly, but I always thought I had a good brain. My father died of Alzheimer's disease. I had no idea that my own bad behavior was contributing to me getting it as well. And over the next 10 months, she lost 90 pounds. I am so proud of her. This is not, I tell people this is not a diet. The first 3 letters of the word diet are die. This is a program to get control of your brain and your body for the rest of your life. Now, when you think of your motivation, so preventing Alzheimer's disease, getting the fat off your body, fat stores toxins. Some people want to know, why does being overweight cause a smaller brain? Because being overweight increases inflammation in your body. Inflammation starts to kill everything. Fat also stores toxic materials, so anything toxic, your body will then hold on to it. So you want anchor images in your head or on your computer or on your refrigerator or on your bathroom mirror to remind you why you must be healthy. So I'm going to share with you my anchor image. So this is Emmy. Emmy is my 8-month-old granddaughter. And she's so cute. And she has a really bad seizure disorder. And it's very clear that having me in her life is good, because I know a lot about medical things, and I can be very helpful to her mom and dad and to her. And I've already been involved in some of the fights to get her the world's best care. And if I'm not right, Emmy's not going to be as good as she can be. So that's a constant reminder to me to do the right thing for my health. So who is Emmy in your life? Who is that person, or what is that image? Get it where you can see it all the time. The third step is you need to know about the health of your brain. So I call this practical neuroscience. How does your brain work? So I got my brain scanned in 1991. So in 1991, I ordered my first brain scan. I'd already been a psychiatrist for almost 10 years. And when I first started doing imaging, it changed everything in my own practice. But I was so intrigued by this technology, I scanned everybody I knew. I scanned my ex-wife. I scanned my children, my mother, who ended up having a perfect brain because, like Dr. Rapp, she just did the right things. And then I scanned myself. And I thought I was going to have a drop-dead gorgeous brain. Because I don't drink. I've never done drugs. I don't smoke. And I looked at my brain and I went, yuck. Why is it bumpy? I was very unhappy. But then I figured out. I was only getting 4 hours of sleep at night because I thought I was special. I didn't realize I was stupid. It's a below 100 IQ decision. Sleep is really critical. You want a high-performance brain? You need to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. There are actually sleep doctors that recommend, if you're interviewing somebody, ask them how much sleep they get. And if they get less than 7 hours, don't hire them because they make more mistakes. How interesting. Less than 7 hours of sleep at night, lower overall blood flow to your brain. And if you think you have low blood flow to your brain, your decisions are better or worse? What do you think? Worse. Anything that decreases blood flow to an organ prematurely ages the organ. Ate fast food like every day. Drank diet soda like she was my best friend. Was chronically stressed. Was not brain smart at all. So, but I did develop brain envy. And if you look at my brain today, it is so much better. So that's not what happens with aging. So what happens with aging is your brain goes like this. Well, not mine. Mine went like that. I'm not bragging. So let me show you how this works out practically. So Professor Andy McGill from the University of Michigan heard me speak about my work with brain imaging and mental illness like ADD, anxiety, and depression. And he had a daughter who was struggling. And so he brought his daughter to our clinic in Northern California. So I have a clinic not very far from here, right next to the San Francisco airport. And so that she would not feel singled out, he decided he'd get his brain scanned too. And when we scanned him, it was truly terrible. And I'm like, Andy, what's the deal with your brain? He said, what? I said, are you like doing bad things, like drugs, alcohol? He said, never done drugs. And he said, I don't drink much. And what I've learned as a psychiatrist, that when someone says I don't drink much, you always have to go, well, what does that mean? And so we like counted, 2 drinks when he got home, a glass of wine with dinner, he had a nightcap, and every day he was having 4 or 5 drinks. And I'm like, every day? He said, yeah, but it's not a problem. He said, I'm never drunk. Like, it's a big problem. Plus, he's 100 pounds overweight. And he totally got brain envy and did everything I said. Now, some of you may come up to me afterwards and go, what's the one thing I should do? Stop being stupid. Do all of them. So, 11 years later, he came back to my clinic from Michigan, and he's like, I am so grateful to you. He's lost 100 pounds. He has exercised every day for the last 1,800 days. He has this little idea in his head, not breaking the streak. I'm not breaking the streak. And his cardiac fitness is in the top 1% of people 20 years younger than he is. But look at what happened to his brain. Literally aged backwards. Now, how do you know about the health of your brain? unless you look at it at some point. I didn't know. I thought my habits were like great, right? Don't drink, don't smoke, chronically stressed, not sleeping, eating bad food, right? I mean, it wakes you out of denial. So this is a man who failed marital therapy, actually got an F. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I've been to marital therapy. It's not that much fun. But how do you fail, right? At the end of 3 years and $25,000, the therapist told this couple to get divorced. It's like, it isn't going to work. But they were very upset. They went for 3 years, spent $25,000. They wanted to be married. And the therapist got really anxious, and she said, well, I know this doctor in Newport Beach, California, who takes care of really difficult people. Maybe you should see him. And so they came to our clinic, and as part of our process, we look at people's brains, because how the hell do I know what's going on inside someone's head just by talking to them? That's sort of crazy. And when we scanned the husband, his brain looked terrible. This is what a drug addict's brain looks like, or an alcoholic's brain looks like. But I looked at his history, because we just don't do scans, we do long, detailed histories on people, and he said he didn't drink, and he never did drugs. Now, what's the first thing you learn as a doctor about drug addicts and alcoholics? They lie a lot. So I have this terrible scan. He says no. So one of my first questions in front of his wife is, are you telling me the truth? That you don't drink and you've never done drugs? He goes, Dr. Amen, that's not my problem. He said, I have many problems. That's not it. And then I looked to the wife, and I said, is he telling me the truth? She said, oh, yes, Dr. Amen. He doesn't drink. He's never done drugs. He's just an asshole. So I start chuckling. But in my mind, I'm going, if that's true, why does his brain look so awful? And so I do the differential diagnosis in my head. You know, what are the options? Drugs, alcohol? Probably not if his wife who hates him says no. An environmental toxin, severe anemia, some form of lack of oxygen, like a near drowning episode, a brain infection. And so as I was doing this, I looked to him and I said, where do you work? He said, I work in a furniture factory. I said, what do you do? He said, I spend my days finishing furniture. He was doing drugs. In fact, he was doing the worst drug of abuse, which is inhaling organic solvents. No amount of marital therapy would fix this. And so I looked to his wife and I said, so when did he become an asshole? She said, what do you mean? I said, did you marry him that way? Do you have father issues that you're trying to work out? She said, no. When we got married, he was great. It wasn't until about 5 years ago. And then she put her hand over her mouth and she said, oh my God, about the time he started working in the furniture factory is when his behavior started to change. And we have all these people who are painters, or who finish furniture, or who work in hair salons around toxic substances with their brain being damaged, and nobody knows about it because nobody's looking at their brain. How crazy is that? You need to know about the physical health of your brain. How do you know unless you look? When I turned 50, my doctor wanted me to get a colonoscopy. I immediately looked at him and said, "Why don't you want to look at my brain? Isn't the other end of my body just as important?" But you know, the fact is, we don't look at what we do. And the horrifying statistic is that Alzheimer's disease starts in your brain 30 to 50 years before you have any symptoms. And there's no cure for it on the horizon. So this person who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at the age of 59 likely already started to have changes in her brain before she was 30. You have no time to wait to get healthy. Alzheimer's disease, again, is expected to triple in the next 25 years with our aging population. And you need to be on an Alzheimer's prevention program now. This is an illness you do not want to get. It is a disaster for brain function and subsequently your life. So, how do you know about the health of your brain? I think brain scans like ours will be like colonoscopies by 2020. They will be standard. Now, on our website at amenclinics.com, also at theamensolution.com, we have a brain health audit, and we actually have a very sophisticated neuropsych assessment that you can take if you join our community. And then based on the scores, so based on how you score, we'll give you very specific exercises to enhance the health of your brain. It's got to be one of the important things that you do. The next step is, now let's talk about what are the things to avoid. The essence of brain health is actually very simple. Avoid things that hurt your brain and do things that help your brain. Since Chloe, my 8-year-old, was 2 years old, she and I have played this game. Call it Chloe's game. This is good for my brain or bad for my brain. And she's very good. She'll get all of the answers right. But by instilling it in her head, it has made a huge difference in her life. We were just on a hike with her, a fairly strenuous hike, and she had the dog, and she did really well. And at the end of the hike, her mother looked at her, and she said, "I am so proud of you. You are a tough cookie." And Chloe has red hair, which explains it all. She put her hands on her hips and she said, "I don't want to be a tough cookie. I want to be a tough red bell pepper." And it all comes from Chloe's game. This is good for my brain or bad for my brain. Your brain is the most complicated organ in the universe. There is nothing as complicated as the human brain, nothing. It is estimated we have 100 billion nerve cells, you know, between your ears, 100 billion nerve cells, trillions of supportive cells, more connections in your brain than there are stars in the universe. And even though your brain is only 2% of your body's weight, it uses 20 to 30% of the calories that you consume. So of the lunch that you had today, almost a third of it went to feed 2% of your body's weight. Your brain is the most expensive real estate in your body. Why would you ever put crap food in your body to hurt your brain? If you had $1 million racehorse, would you ever feed it junk food? Only if you were an idiot. And you are so much more important than a horse could ever be. Let's be more thoughtful here. Above 100 IQ decision or below 100 IQ decision? On average, we lose 85,000 brain cells a day. And your behavior accelerates that or it decelerates it. How cool is that? So learning things to avoid and the things to do are very important. So let's talk about it. You know, Brendan and I had a serious talk about his behavior. Putting yourself at high risk is above or below 100? What do you think? Your brain is very soft. It's about the consistency of soft butter, tofu, custard, somewhere between egg whites and Jell-O. And it's housed in a really hard skull that has many sharp, bony ridges. But I had a helmet on. Think about this with me, because a lot of you have done this little lie. You let your kids play tackle football, right? Well, they have a helmet on. Think with me. Emmy's 8 months old, right? And she's really cute. What if one of her parents, and this would never happen, but what if one of her parents were really irritated, and Emmy, because she's sick, wouldn't stop crying, and they picked up Emmy and they shook her? Can that cause long-term brain damage? Yes. So what's the difference between being on a moped and getting into an accident and your head hits the cement, okay? What the helmet does is it prevents your skull from breaking, but it doesn't do anything to stop your brain from doing this inside your skull. Are you with me? So thinking, allowing your children to snowboard even with a helmet is dangerous. Skiing, even with a helmet, is dangerous. Golf is good. Tennis, terrific. Table tennis is the world's best sport. Very few brain injuries with ping pong. Drugs and alcohol, we talked about that. Alcohol does so many bad things for your brain. Yes, it does some good things for your heart if you have a little bit. But the Harvard School of Public Health actually, looked at this issue, and on average, alcohol kills 100,000 Americans a year. And if you look at some of the health benefits, maybe it helps about 20,000 people. So it's like, less is better. Obesity, we talked about. You want to avoid the Dinosaur Syndrome. Sleep apnea. If you snore loudly, stop breathing at night, you're chronically tired during the day, get it checked and get it treated. And too many, and some of you guys are here, you've already been diagnosed with sleep apnea, and they sent you home with a little Darth Vader CPAP mask, but you're like, I'm not wearing that damn thing. Well, guess what? Your brain will be damned if you don't. Because with a lack of oxygen, your brain is doing this. And on the scans, the Spect scans that we do, it looks like early Alzheimer's when we see sleep apnea scans. Take it seriously. Smoking is obviously not good for you because it constricts blood flow. As it constricts blood flow, it prematurely ages your brain, just like smoking prematurely ages your skin. Can you tell the skin of a smoker? See, I have a brother-in-law who is my age, and if you put us side by side, my skin actually looks really good, and his is deeply wrinkled. Why? Because he's starving his skin of oxygen. You don't want to do that to your brain. And I know many of you think caffeine is your friend. It's not your friend. It's not a good friend. It's a bad friend. 5-hour energy drinks, they make you old. Caffeine does like 7 bad things for you. Constricts blood flow to the brain, like by 30%. It dehydrates you. Your brain is 80% water. Anything that dehydrates you is bad for you. It's addictive. I can't stop my coffee. If I do, I'll get a headache. What is that called? Withdrawal. It interferes with sleep. It increases cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which puts fat on your belly and kills cells in your memory centers. It is not your friend. If you can't get by in your life without caffeine, you need to up your sleep. I mean, that's why people are so dependent on it, because they're not sleeping well. On average, in 1900, Americans got 9 hours of sleep at night. In 2011, we get 6. We need to do a better job. Just think, in teenagers, brand new study came out. If teenagers average just an hour less sleep, they have a dramatic increased incidence of depression and suicide. It's that important. Diabetes and high blood pressure hurt the brain. Diabetes is a blood vessel disorder. Actually, it's a blood sugar disorder, but it causes brittle blood vessels. Hypertension is your blood pressure goes up. The blood flow to your brain goes down. Toxins should be obvious, but if you're foggy-headed, one of the first questions I ask my patients is, have you had a flood at home? Because maybe they have mold growing at home and nobody knows about it. Or a lot of our patients, they come and they have that toxic-looking scan, and I find out they've been painting their cars in an unventilated garage. I'm like, it's not the sign of intelligent life. Low hormone levels, and it can be thyroid or testosterone. Be low levels of omega-3 fatty acids, which we can test for on the blood, or low levels of vitamin D. How many of you know your vitamin D level? You actually know the number. Now that is just excellent. All of the rest of you should know that as well, because low levels of vitamin D are associated with heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, depression, and dementia. And how easy is it? Get your level tested, and you either get more sun without sunscreen, or you take a supplement. Now, don't go crazy with the sun without sunscreen, but because now everybody's wearing sunscreen, our vitamin D levels have just gone to hell. It's one of those unintended consequences of trying to do something good. Poor diets. And sugar, you know, I know I'm a bummer, but sugar is addictive. It increases erratic brain cell firing, increases inflammation in your body. It is not your friend. On average, Americans eat 150 pounds of sugar a year. Pretty crazy. Chronic stress kills cells in the memory centers and makes you fat. Untreated depression doubles your risk for Alzheimer's disease. Untreated ADD, you know, short attention span, distractibility, disorganization, restlessness, problems sitting still, impulse control. That leads to all sorts of negative consequences. And they're really wonderful treatments, many of them natural treatments. I have a program called Magnificent Mind at Any Age, where I talk about all the natural treatments for things like ADD, anxiety, and depression and insomnia. Lack of exercise. Lack of exercise. Brand new study out just this week is associated with cancer. Move. It's very important. Poor decisions. Unhealthy peer group. And not knowing your brain's own vulnerability. I love what I do. I mean, I truly love what I do. I'm blessed every day. And one of the reasons I love what I do, it's the stories that I get. I have so many cool stories I could tell you. And this February, I was on my PBS tour for my new show, The Amen Solution. And Chris came up to me at a lecture. And it often happens like this. People come up to me and they start crying. And I'm like, what is it about me that makes people cry? And then she composed herself, and she said, 2 years ago, my 12-year-old daughter, Sammy, died of bone cancer. She had something called osteosarcoma, which is a horrible cancer and a horrible way to die because there's a lot of pain associated with it. And I was glad she died so she could be out of pain, but I had no idea how hard it would hit me. And I went to bed and I just ate and drank and got so depressed that on the 2-year anniversary of Sammy's death, I had planned to kill myself. And then I saw your show on public television. And I read your book. And I just did everything you said. I love that part. She said within 8 days, I felt better. I lost my cravings for the alcohol and for the bad food. I started to exercise, and it was 10 weeks that I met her, and she'd lost 24 pounds. And she said, I feel so much better. I think you've saved my life. I like that. And now it's 8 months later. Her t-shirt says, "Run happy." She's lost 35 pounds, but that's a side effect. She's got her brain back. And when you go through grief or loss, never allow it to be your excuse to hurt yourself. Because there's evidence now that people who react to a loss with grief, anxiety, depression, or drinking die early. You want to be sure that you react to losses by going toward health rather than away from health. So what are the things to do? So we talked about the things not to do. Now I know some of you are going, but how can you have any fun? Right? If we go back and we look at the list, Dr. Amen, so we have a high school course that's now in 42 states and 7 countries called Making a Good Brain Great. And we teach this. And invariably, one smart alecky teenage boy is like, how can you have any fun? And so we do this little exercise called Who Has More Fun? The kid with the good brain or the kid with the bad brain? Who gets the girl they like and gets to keep her because he's not a jerk? The kid with the good brain or the kid with the bad brain? Who gets into the college he wants to get into? Who has more independence and freedom and trust from their parents because they act in consistent, thoughtful ways? The person with the good brain or the person with the bad brain? It's pretty easy. It's the person with the good brain. And who gets into the college they want to get into? And who gets the job they want? And who has more money? And who goes on cooler vacations? And who makes a bigger difference with their life? The person with the good brain or the person with the bad brain? So if you think you're going to have to mourn the loss of any of these bad things, think again. It's all about changing, shifting your consciousness, your mindset. These things are poison. I want no part of them. So, what to do? Start making good decisions. It's the quality of your decisions that matter. I'm going to give you a very specific prescription on how to do that. The most direct path, the strongest and most direct path to brain health is to hang out with other healthy people. And if you have no one in your environment that's doing it, start a support group. It's not that hard. Or you can join the Amen Solution, hang out with 4,000 other brain-healthy people. Protect your brain, be smart, clean environment, physical health. They're totally connected. Be at a healthy weight, get 8 hours of sleep, keep coming to Brendan's conferences because you keep learning. New learning is absolutely essential. When you learn something new, your brain makes a new connection. When you stop learning, your brain starts to disconnect itself. So I have a new public television show coming out in February, and it's called Use Your Brain to Change Your Age. And the shows on TV, they look so easy, but they take me 4 or 5 months to write. And I obsess over every single word. And then I torture my wife and my kids and my mother and my employees and my colleagues, and I practice it repeatedly. And I was practicing the new one with my mom, and she invited one of her friends over. And her friend was 60 years old. And halfway through the middle of it, I'm getting feedback, and she says, you know, I'm 60 years old, and I just don't want to worry anymore about what I eat or about exercising. And I thought about that. And I went, I said, I can understand that as long as you're okay with the effects of an aging brain. Because as we age, our margin for error goes lower. And I'm like, not good. I'm like, not okay with the effects of an aging brain. I want to be building my reserve, not stealing from my reserve. So if that's your mindset, you just want to make sure you're okay with the effects of an aging brain. Great diet is just absolutely essential. Your brain uses 20 to 30% of the calories you consume, so the quality of your thoughts is a direct reflection of the health of the food that you eat. And we have very simple rules, and Tana's cookbook is just amazing. And the rules are only high-quality calories, and not that many of them. Water, lean protein, smart carbohydrates. What's that? Low glycemic, high fiber carbohydrates. Okay? High glycemic carbohydrates like potatoes and rice and sugar, even watermelon, they turn to sugar in your body way too fast. Healthy fat, low-fat diets are bad for you. 60% of the solid weight, so once you take the water out, what's left? The solid weight of your brain, 60% of it is fat. So if someone calls you a fathead, say thank you. Low-fat diets are not good for you, but of course you want to eat healthy fats, so things filled with omega-3 fatty acids like salmon and tuna and avocados and walnuts, green leafy vegetables, and so on. And eat from the rainbow, which means put foods in your diet of many different colors, natural colors. This does not mean Skittles. Jelly Belly doesn't count. Wise calorie spending. I think of calories now like money. If you overspend, you get bankrupt. If you overeat, your body gets bankrupt. Now, it's not as simple as calories in versus calories out. You want to make sure it's high-quality calories in versus high-quality energy out. New learning, physical exercise. You want to kill the ants running around your head. What's that? ANT stands for automatic negative thoughts. The thoughts that come into your mind automatically and ruin your day. You do not have to believe every stupid thought that you have. Anxiety and depression are driven by negative thinking patterns. This is something they should have taught you in second grade. Whenever you feel sad, mad, nervous, or out of control, write down what you're thinking. Because the act of writing it down helps to get it out of your head. And then evaluate the quality of your thoughts. And in my work, I talk about 9 different kinds of ants, things like fortune telling and mind reading, guilt beatings, focusing on the negative, blame. And so you identify them, and then you talk back to them. So one of my favorite examples is in 1989, I wrote an article for Parade magazine called How to Get Out of Your Own Way. We got 10,000 letters to our office. And I'm like, whoa. And CNN asked me if I would be on one of their shows. And I'd never been on television before. And I was excited and nervous, because if you knew me, I can have a fair amount of anxiety. But I decided, okay, I'll go do that. And I'm in the green room waiting to go on, and all of a sudden, my heart starts beating out of my chest, and I can't catch my breath. And I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. And thank God for me that the little voice in my head starts laughing at me. You treat people that have this problem. What would you tell them to do? Don't leave. Because if you leave an anxious situation where it's not dangerous, the situation now controls you. Breathe. So I've been teaching my patients diaphragmatic breathing to calm down their anxiety. So they start breathing. Write down your thoughts. So I got a piece of paper. I wrote down, first thought, you're going to forget your name. Now, I've been on television literally thousands of times since then, and no one's ever asked me my name. They already knew it. They invited me. The second thought was, you're going to stutter. And the third thought was, 2 million people are going to think you're an idiot. Like, no wonder you're so anxious. That is so stupid. And then so I identified them. So you're going to forget your name. It's fortune telling. I'm predicting the future. And once you identify the thought, you then talk back to it. And you sort of have an attitude with it. How many of you were good at talking back to your parents when you were teenagers? I was excellent. But it's funny how we never talk back to ourselves. So you're going to forget your name. Fortune telling. And I wrote, probably not. I've never forgotten my name. But if I do, I have my driver's license in my wallet. You're going to stutter, fortune telling. Probably not, but if you do, there are probably stutterers who will have a new doctor they can relate to. And then the third one was 2 million people are going to think you're an idiot. Now I went mind reading. How do I know what they're going to think? And then right next to it, I wrote, probably so. But then I wrote the numbers 18, 40, 60, which is a rule I've been teaching my patients called the 18, 40, 60 rule that says when you're 18, you worry about what everybody's thinking of you. And when you're 40, you don't give a damn what anybody thinks about you. And when you're 60, you realize no one has been thinking about you at all. People spend their days worrying and thinking about themselves, not you. And I was able to settle myself down, go on TV, didn't do very well, but at least it got me a second shot. Because what would have happened in my career if I would have left the studio in Los Angeles is I'd have never come back. And I wouldn't have gotten to meet Larry King and all the sort of wonderful people I've gotten to work with over the years. Don't believe every stupid thought you have. So here's the exercise. Whenever you feel sad, mad, nervous, or out of control, write down your thoughts. Identify the distortion and talk back to it. Stress management is so important, and killing ants is the big part. And why is it called automatic negative thoughts or ants? Because that's what I think. When people get anxious or depressed, they get infested with these things. So of course you have to develop an internal ant eater to get rid of them. Supplements, such as a great multiple vitamin. I know you saw research recently that said if you take a multiple vitamin, you're likely to die early. If you actually read the research, it's nonsense. The American Medical Association recommends that people take a multiple vitamin every day because they help prevent chronic illness. Omega-3 fatty acids, I tell all of my patients, multiple vitamin, fish oil, know your vitamin D level and optimize it. And then I'll tell you about some brain nutrients in just a little bit. And exercise is so important. The stronger you are as you age, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's disease. It's very important. Exercise is literally the fountain of youth. So avoid bad, do good, but especially exercise, and exercise that builds your muscles. All right. So Some of you know about my work, know that we've been doing the world's largest brain imaging study on active and retired NFL players. We have 115 players. The NFL was not stepping up to the plate to really own the fact that playing football is a brain-damaging sport, so my colleagues and I decided to prove it, or not. Trust me, we proved it. We have some very wonderful players as part of our study, like Terry Bradshaw and Freddie Dreyer. The damage is unbelievably awful. Some of these players have been hit in the head 30,000 times. There's actually evidence now that kids who play in high school, even if they never have a concussion, have lower blood flow to their brain. Your brain is soft and your skull is hard. Imagine the shaken baby thing happening multiple times a game. The damage was so bad in their brains that I put them on a repair program. I taught them how to avoid bad and do good. And then we put them on a multiple vitamin, one I created called Neurovite, another one called omega-3 Power, high-dose fish oil, highly purified, and a supplement I developed called Brain and Memory Power Boost that has 7 things to optimize brain function. 2 things for blood flow, ginkgo and vinpocetine. 2 things for acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that helps your memory. Something to help stabilize nerve cell membranes, a super antioxidant, and alpha-lipoic acid, which helps balance brain blood sugar levels, which helps you think much better. And we are so excited. 80% of our players showed improvement on that very simple supplement, lifestyle-based plan, especially in things like memory, attention, mood, motivation, and sleep. And what you're seeing in these images is the yellow area is area of increased activity after the treatment. We completely activated their prefrontal cortex. So what's the prefrontal cortex? It's the front third of your brain. It's your brain's supervisor. It watches you. It helps you with things like forethought and judgment, impulse control, organization, and planning. If you want a high-performance life, your prefrontal cortex has to work right. Otherwise, the decisions in your life aren't quite so good. So what we did through this study was activate the most human, thoughtful part of their brain. We're very excited, and we published this in a scientific journal this year. One of our players went to Stanford, not very far from here, and then played for the Denver Broncos. When we first tested him, his memory scored in the 5th percentile. So what does that mean? That means that 95% of people his age and education scored better than he did. That's a very bad thing. After he was on the program, he scored at the 53rd percentile. That's 1,000% improvement, and his brain was better. So even if you have been bad to your brain, if you've had head injuries, or your weight's not good, or you're struggling with things like hypertension, diabetes, getting on this program can make a huge difference, and you can then start to reverse the aging process in your brain. I just don't know of anything more exciting than that. You have the ability to do that. Resilience and creativity. The best way to reduce stress in your life is to stop screwing up. I love this quote because it's so true. When you look at the stress in your life, it's often, more often than anything else, because of the things you have done. If you make better decisions, you'll have better relationships. If you make better decisions, you will have more money. If you make better decisions, you're going to sleep better. Better decisions are what cause resilience. So how do you have better self-control and less stress? Clear focus and motivation. On our online community, we start by having you fill out an exercise called the One-Page Miracle. On one form, You write, what do you want in your relationships? For your money, for your work, for your physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. What do you want? And then you ask yourself every day, does my behavior get me what I want? But if you never do a very clear set of goals for your life, you just sort of bounce around from this thing to that thing to this thing and so on, and you make bad decisions. So in my one-page miracle, the first thing is I want to have a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship with my wife. But you know, I don't always feel like that. And sometimes I get thoughts in my head that no one should ever hear. But if I know that the goal is very clear, I filter those thoughts through, does this get me what I want? It's very important. How many of you are married? Is it helpful for you to say everything you think in your marriage? Of course not. Relationships require tact, forethought, good frontal lobes. So I was with a friend of mine who had been in a car accident at a conference. She was in her car and someone hit her going 70 miles an hour, rear-ended her. So you can bet she had shaken baby syndrome. And if you were with her, you know this is just someone who just said whatever came to her mind. And we were at a conference and we were sitting behind two overweight women. And one woman said to the other, I don't know why I'm overweight. I just eat like a bird. And Lisa said, so everyone could hear, yeah, like a fucking condor. And I just turned beet red. And I looked at her, and she's like, oh no, did that get out? Jerry Seinfeld once said, the brain is a sneaky organ. We all have weird, crazy, stupid, sexual, violent thoughts that no one should ever hear. If you protect and optimize your brain, you have more friends. Clear focus and motivation. Balanced blood sugar is absolutely essential. Low blood sugar, low blood flow, more bad decisions. So how do you balance your blood sugar? You eat. On our program, you just eat smart. And you eat 4 or 5 times a day. And you include some protein, especially at breakfast. Now, I don't know if any of you are like me, but before I sort of saw the light, I would go to Winchell's Donuts in the morning and like have 2 or 3. And how do you think I'd feel like 20 minutes, 30 minutes later? Like my brain was in mud. But what do we do with children? What do we feed them in the morning? Sugar cereal, Pop-Tarts, donuts, waffles, Danish, pancakes with liquid sugar. And then we go to school and focus. And when they can't, we go ADD. And we put them on powerful medications that ruin their insurability. It's like, how crazy is that? Let's just try the simple things first. Get them to exercise, because exercise boosts focus. Feed them right. At least 7 hours of sleep at night if you want to make good decisions. Don't put yourself in vulnerable situations. Forethought. The 2 most important words in the English language when it comes to your health, then what? If I do this, then what will happen? If I say this, then what will happen? Forethought. Too many decisions deplete your willpower. Did you know that? The more decisions you make a day, then you just stop making them. And if you get too many emails a day, you have to make a decision with every email, even if it's just to delete the spam. They deplete your decision-making skills. Be very careful with that. You always want to protect your decision-making. Never make important decisions or have serious conversations with your wife when you're tired. Let me tell you about this one study. It's just fascinating. So they looked at parolees. So coming up in front of the parole board. And they looked at the time of day and the success rate of the parolees with the same crimes. And if you came up at 8:30 in the morning when they started, you had a 600% chance, greater chance of being paroled than if the person came up at 11:30 in the morning. And then your chances went up again at 1:30 and went to hell at 4 o'clock. So what is going on? It's the blood sugar and the number of decisions made of the parole board. So what this teaches me is that if I want something from my wife, feed her first. Okay, number 7, a brain smart culture. So I was working on the Amen solution, my book that's out now that I love because it talks about the 10 steps to be thinner, smarter, and happier. If you do these 10 things, and they're really what I'm talking about today, you lose weight, your cognitive ability goes up, and you decrease your risk for Alzheimer's disease, and it treats depression. It's like, how cool is that? So I'm really into sort of the brain-body connection. And while I was finishing it last August, so in 2010, I go to my church. And I tell my wife to take Chloe, our 8-year-old, to children's church. I guess she was 7 then. And I'm going to go save us seats. I'm working on this book. I walk toward the sanctuary. This is what I see. Hundreds of donuts for sale for charity. And then, no lie, right around the corner, bacon and sausage cooking on the grill. And I'm really irritated. And then I see hundreds of hot dogs being prepared for after church. And I'm just sort of beside myself upset. And I sit down, and the minister starts talking about the ice cream festival they had the night before. And now I'm just psychotic. I'm like, there's a brand new study from Northwestern University that says if you go to church a lot, you have a 20% greater chance of being obese. And I've been going to church since I was a little boy, and now I'm thinking spaghetti dinners, pancake breakfasts, ice cream socials. They have no idea what they're doing to the health of our country. And so I start typing on my phone. And when my wife finds me in church, she hates this thing. And she gives you that look that only your wife can give you. Like, why the hell are you on that thing in church? And so I showed her what I was writing. Go to church. Get donuts. Bacon, sausage, hot dogs, ice cream. They have no idea. They're sending people to heaven early. And then in capital letters, this is not the plan. And I was so angry, I spent that service praying that God would use me to help change the culture of churches. That's sort of a big prayer, isn't it? And I was serious. And you know, my life doesn't quite work like this all the time, but 2 weeks later, Pastor Rick Warren from Saddleback Church called me. So Pastor Warren is the author of The Purpose-Driven Life, which sold 35 million copies worldwide. It was the world's best-selling book 4 years in a row. He's on the cover of Time magazine as America's pastor. He did the invocation at the last 2 inaugurations. He's the senior pastor at Saddleback, which is one of the largest churches in America. And he said, Dr. Amen, I saw you on public television talking about the Dinosaur Syndrome. He said, I'm not healthy and neither is my church. Will you help us get healthy? I have goosebumps now thinking about it, because I'm thinking, now that's a fast answer to prayer. So, together with my friends Mark Hyman and Mehmet Oz, we created the Daniel Plan, God's prescription for your health. It is a 52-week program to get the church healthy. And one of the cool things about Saddleback, because it's so large, the church actually runs on small groups. They have 5,000 small groups where people meet every week together to study something that's important to the church. And so we provide their healthcare curriculum. And we have 15,000 people in our project. And the results so far, we launched it January 15th, have been spectacular. As a church, after 9 months, they've lost 250,000 pounds. People report improved energy, focus, creativity, sleep, mood, reductions in stress, blood pressure, asthma, blood sugar, sexual dysfunction, and many medications. When I got to Saddleback, they were in fact worse than the church I was going to. They were food addicts, the worst possible food you could imagine. I walked into the green room the first day. I said, because they said, well, what can we do for you, Dr. Amen? I said, I'm going to film my new show. Can you get me a group? And so they got me 300 people. And I walked into the pastor's green room, and there were Snicker bars and sodas and potato chips. And I looked at the assistant pastor, Pastor Steve, and I went, are you trying to kill me? And he laughed. He said, Dr. Amen, if you think that's bad, I run a Bible study on Saturday mornings, and if the men learn their verses, I give them barbecued ribs. And then I began to think, you know, this is not going to be easy. And in fact, it's not been easy. But we have a Daniel Plan menu with the calories on the menu at Saddleback. They are doing so much better. I am so proud of them. And Pastor Warren has lost 50 pounds. He's stronger than ever. He's not had junk food since January. He was a total food addict. His cognitive scores are much better, and he's got big goals. See, I couldn't have a better partner in this, because this is not a Christian initiative. It's an initiative to get the world healthy through where you worship. Whether it's in a synagogue or in a mosque or a temple or a church, we don't care. We just want you to get healthy, because that is God's plan for you. What most churches do is not God's plan. And when I first met Rick, you know, he's very obese. I said, look, I have to tell you, I'm tired of fat football coaches and fat pastors. It's the wrong message. And he likes me because I'm blunt with him. So we've had 1 or 2 disagreements. But this is just 2 weeks ago. He's down 50 pounds. I love that. And the plan is to export the program in 2012 to 400,000 churches around the world. So he's looking at 1 billion people. But I want you to take this program home with you. I want you to be doing this in your family, in your business, in your church, wherever you gather, in your school. Did you know the Cleveland Clinic, one of the world's premier hospitals, has the world's busiest McDonald's per square foot? There's a conflict of interest going on there. So, components of a brain smart culture. Love your brain. Teach other people you love about brain health. Focus on brain healthy nutrition. Never spend money for your church, your school, or your company on food that hurts people. Encourage exercise. At my business, we often have meetings and we walk. I mean, well, why not? I can talk and walk at the same time. Let's do that. Encourage new learning. So cross-train, get people at work to learn different functions, and be a friend to the people you love, not an accomplice. You know the difference? So a friend is someone who supports the health goals of the people they love. An accomplice is someone who says, you know, you've worked hard all week, let's go out for ice cream. Or, I've cooked all weekend for you. Eat more. Or a friend of mine, we went to the drugstore, and I was going to wait in the car and sit there and answer emails, and she goes, do you want an ice cream? And I just looked at her. I said, no, not in this lifetime. And she said, okay. And when she came back to the car, she had an ice cream for me. And I'm like, what part of no did you have trouble with? She said, it was on sale. I'm like, let me see if I get this right. I have plenty of money. You have plenty of money. I don't want the extra calories. They're not good for me, or the sugar. What are you thinking? She goes, you want me to throw it away? I said, well, if you give it to a homeless person, you're just going to hurt that person. See, when you have a food pusher in your life, you have to confront them. I wasn't angry at her, wasn't mean to her. I was clear. Be clear with them. And if you do it 2 or 3 times, unless they have a learning problem, they'll get the message. But don't just give in because it's like, well, it was on sale. It's one of those little lies that kill you early. It starts from the top. If you're the leader of your family, it starts with you. If you're the boss at work, it starts with you. If you're the senior pastor, it starts with you. If you are the president of the United States, why in God's name are you having a beer summit? Come on, let's be a little more thoughtful. I mean, I love the healthcare stuff that Mrs. Obama is doing. I love that. I think that's really smart. We just have to be congruent. You individually, personally can make a huge difference. You can do this. None of what I have told you today is hard. You just have to make consistently good decisions. Now, you literally have no time to wait. So now is the time to get your brain tested. Now is the time to start making better decisions. Now is the time to avoid anything that hurts your brain and to engage in regular brain healthy habits. Now is the time to get any brain problems treated and to do this program with a partner. So I want you to just think as we close. You have a choice. So if you don't do the program, this is what's going to happen to your brain as you age. And it's not based on 14 cases I've seen. The Amen clinics, we have the world's largest database of brains, and an aging brain is not what I want. But if you do this program, your brain can be dramatically better, often in a short period of time. Together, we can create a brain-healthy world. Thank you so much.